how do you find the balance? So I already have an answer for you. Is that okay if I answer it right there? Who's finding the balance? I want to offer you something. You are balance. The ego has an idea of what balance is. That's actually a compartmentalization of you. So the ego cuts you up into pieces and goes, the balance of this. Someone said to me the other day, how do you balance comedy and transformation? And I'm like, I don't. I'm me, and those things happen. Right? Like I don't go, okay, I'll bring 8 tablespoons of comedy in, and then I have that balanced. I'm balancing these me's here. I got this nice a pinch of transformation. Today's schedule. You are balance. What's throwing off the balance is the ego's attempt to balance, right? There's a lot of things that we do that make it harder. Let me tell you something. I have a client that says this a lot. Now, there is no part of me that's not empathetic or understanding the actual point she's saying. But you know what she says a lot when I work with her? She says, as a woman, though, and I understand what she's saying. I'm not dismissing that we all have different lives and different things. But she says, as a woman, and I noticed that there's a factor that she is a woman, but then there's another part of her that's compartmentalizing that she's a woman. So if you're here, if I'm doing this thing going, I'm doing this call as a man, as a white guy, as a, you know what I mean, as a 44-year-old, as a whatever, I'm adding more things that stop the flow of what's coming through. So imagine that, you know, you are capable of doing amazing things if you don't bring in this compartmentalizer and this balancer in. I understand the point. I understand that these things still are there. That's not a dismissing of as a woman, but also at the same time, the compartmentalizing is a dismissing of it. You're making it harder. You're balancing. I got to do this and be this. I got to do this and I'm going to do this. Like, think of if I was like, okay, I'm going to do the call tonight, but I got to remember I'm wearing a blue shirt and I also have a gray beard. So how would I manage this call with a gray beard? Okay, I'm going to approach it this way. You hear how I'm just cutting myself off from everything that I am, right? Because quite a bit of those things are not for me to manage. So the answer to the question, first of all, is how do you find the balance between unplugging from news and social media and being aware of what's going on in the world? There's a belief, first of all, Joanne, I'm going to offer you something that might really piss people off, but I want to just open your hearts to a possibility. How do you enjoy, or how do you find the balance between unplugging from the news and social media and being aware of what's going on in the world? Now, I just want to point out, if we didn't have the internet, if we didn't have newspapers and we didn't have this thing, quite a bit of what's going on in the world you wouldn't know about, right? And obviously, there's some good things about knowing what's going on in the world, but also it's a great way to cut yourself off from the ultimate you. And if we didn't have this bizarre thing that humans created that isn't quite natural, for you to constantly be aware of what's going on in every other country, usually when you're aware, it's only the negative things, by the way. Like, you're only aware of where the wars are and where the problems are and where the famine is and all these different things that matter. And yeah, it matters as far as to contribute, but there's also a level of just you're using it to be in stress so you don't have to connect to yourself. And at one point, I noticed me constantly being cognizant of everything going on in the world and checking that is cutting me off from doing this my very best. And that's my contribution to the world. Me finding the truly greatest version of me. And then hopefully that can counterbalance some of the negative things that are going on in the world. Versus if I spent all day being stressed looking at the worst images going on in other countries and coming to you today from a lower vibration stress place, I'm not able to fully access me. So I know that these things are happening and there's not a lack of empathy to that, but there is also a level where I see there's some kind of self, like, look at me being involved in it that lowers my frequency. And I really want to know what I am and just go through the, by the way, let me offer it this way. There's also a ton of things probably going on in different universes and different planets that you don't know about, right? There's probably some problem in other areas that are completely out of your consciousness. Maybe in another universe right now, there's something horrible happening, but you don't know about it. And somehow you've managed to get by, right? So this is not a turn a blind eye to. This is at one point you get a frequency where it flips. Burying your head in the sand is not ignoring this. It starts to be burying your head in the sand is you putting your mind in the stress of all the negative things that are going on as an avoidance of the highest you. So people say you're really burying your head in the sand by not paying attention to what's going on in the world. At one point, if your frequency is this magical thing and angels are trying to talk to you and shit, and there's a higher you, you're actually burying your head in the sand, being caught in what the negative things are going on in the world. People tell me stuff all the time. Of course, I know about a lot of it. People are like, do you know what they're trying to do? Do you know what the government's planning? Yep, I'm burying my head in the sand by being a victim and in stress about what they're actually doing, versus if I'm creating a frequency that's higher and higher and higher, that helps to birth a world where no one would be capable of doing that. Because we're creating a world overall on a higher dimension that's more love-based. And I believe in all my heart that I believe that it doesn't have to take this long, but I believe with all my heart that in 20 years, none of that would be possible. That in about 20 years from now, but I notice that it's exponential. So in 20 years from now, I believe that we're going to be ascended so high that manipulation, control, murder, none of that's possible in this world. That you're not in a place of protection anymore. You're in a place of God level love. And I can feel that it's ascending now rapidly. And I believe that it couldn't happen longer than 20 years from now, but I also believe it's going to happen faster because it moves exponentially. But right now I'm at a frequency where I believe 20 years would be the longest it would take, where we will be in a world that what we call fifth dimension, fourth density, it would just be impossible for those things to happen because only unseen patterns would hurt other people, right? Only unseen patterns would hurt other people. Only the judgment of a pattern and a judgment of other people in a freer place than you perceive yourself to be would cause you to do this. But so my contribution, at least as I see it at this moment, is to continually bring a higher me. And it doesn't even matter necessarily if I'm doing these calls, because I also believe the higher me just affects people even if I'm not on the call. But hopefully what I'm saying helps you give yourself permission to go to a higher frequency. And together we would create a massive higher frequency where it's very clear in my calling that in 20 years from now, it would be impossible for those things to happen. Just like at one point it was impossible for slavery to happen. It was impossible for, gladiator times. Like imagine if we had Gladiator right now, where there's people fighting tigers with that ball and chain kind of thing. That would be seen as barbaric now, right? So more and more things are being seen as barbaric on a faster and faster level. And the only thing that's preventing things from being completely obliterated is that they haven't all the way come to light. So know that all darkness won't work if it's seen. And all darkness is being seen both inside of us and in the collective and in the government and in the media and everything. So Joanne, your belief that you need to keep believing darkness and staring at what's going on in the world is your darkness that still hasn't come up, that says, I think I need to look at everything that's going on in the world. Otherwise, I'm being ignorant. Well, if you don't for a minute, you might feel some pain. And the pain's like, I'm not a part of it. I'm actually scared of being alone. I'm unworthy, whatever. Then you get there and you cry it out, and our collective consciousness goes a little bit higher. The water level's higher. This is where control and manipulation and pain and murder exist. This is where we are. So imagine it's going to drown, right? And we're going to a higher frequency. All darkness is seen. It's just everything's catching up to it, right? So absolute empathy to everything going on in the world. But if I'm too caught in it, then you'll see me at a lower frequency too. And my job is to also see what's going on in your highest is also real. That's also happening. We never think to ourselves while we're watching the news that we're ignoring what's going on in the world, because also spirit guides are existing, higher you, the now, nature. These all exist too. The news doesn't show you this shit. Right? These all exist, right? Rivers, forgiveness, positive things, an awakening of people seeing what dark shit is happening, other people creating other forces that are positive to counterbalance that. That's happening everywhere. There's always an equal. Whatever darkness you see, there's an equal amount of light countering it. There has to be. It's the law, right? So every time you see darkness, know that there's higher awareness and magic that's coming in to save it. So get excited. Whatever you feel is dark, there is higher happening. And there are people that have dark patterns in them that have a flip and move to magical shit. There are people that at one point are helping serve out negative intentions, but are going to become whistleblowers in that instantly, right? And it can change instantly. Right? So know that love moves instantly and control needs a lot of time, and you need a lot of people in on it, and you need a lot of people keeping a secret, and you need a lot of shit that happens on the negative. There's no way. Don't get too caught up in that. You continue to shine your light on a higher and higher and higher frequency and cry out the patterns that are so hooked on being caught in all the negative things that are going on in the world. Remember, that's the old world. The news is telling you the past. You are the future and you are the now. So bring the now in and watch as the world changes around you. I hope that helps, Joanne.